Is 2024 going to be the last year where you could be an English teacher in Vietnam? So Vietnam has a big pattern of following big changes that China makes, being taxation of Westerners, forced healthcare plans for Westerners that have to pay for them, that can't use them, and then the notorious visa changing during the pandemic. And now it's coming down to the education and requirements for students to graduate. Before, students in Vietnam could graduate high school, they had to pass math, literature, and 2 electives, one of them being English as a second language. Now English is being removed from that requirement. One of the biggest concerns already in 2023 is the huge amount of teachers already out here. There is a surplus. It's kind of a seller's market where the schools have such a large pool of teachers to select from, and the competition is getting crazy. I'm going to give you some ideas, some hacks, and some tricks to make sure that you stand out from these other teachers, but we'll talk more about that later. Non-native speakers suffer the same thing as native speakers, where there's just a lot of native teachers, and there's also a lot of non-native teachers that they got to compete with to get these jobs. However, non-native teachers kind of have a slight advantage over native teachers here in Vietnam. Most non-native speakers are certified English teachers. They speak more clear than a Vietnamese English teacher. They know more grammar than us native English speakers do. They typically work for less salary while also accepting to live on campus in a dorm or living at the school center. Now, this doesn't mean there's no hope to get a job. It just means that the non-native and the native side of teaching English in Vietnam is extremely competitive right now, and it's really showing. Let's talk about this new rule. And as of now in 2023, some schools are being made aware of it while other ones aren't. So this could be that the government's trying to test the idea and see how schools and students and parents deal with it. So what exactly is this rule? Students will no longer need to pass an English exam to graduate high school, which means universities aren't really going to have that pressure of requiring an IELTS score above 5.5 or 6.0, whatever it is, for a student to even enroll into a university in Vietnam. Now, this doesn't mean English is done in Vietnam. There's still going to be people that are trying to pass English to get immigration visas, people that are trying to work abroad, people that are just trying to do something English related. It's just going to narrow down the demand. So doing the basic math, this is going to start affecting primary, secondary, in the first and second year of high schools, as these grade levels will no longer be required to have to speak English, write English, or know vocabulary to pass their high school exam. So for them to focus on studying English, tutoring, or any extra classwork, that stuff's going to be eliminated most likely. And also with a lot of private schools and English centers, most of their classes are primary students, secondary students, which are no longer going to need to learn English to pass high school and get to university. This is going to make a huge impact for anybody trying to be an English teacher. So with these changes, the demand for teachers is going to go down a lot, but the demand for work is going to keep skyrocketing. So let's talk about that real fast. Ideally, Vietnam puts teachers into 2 different categories: teaching abilities and activities, and personality and looks. So the first part is just teaching ability and activities. And this part is where a lot of non-native teachers actually outshine native English teachers because they know how to teach professionally. They know how to keep the students excited, and they know how to keep the school happy. And they also have very strong lesson planning skills, and they have activities that the kids just love. Knowing these skills is seriously, it is one of the most important things that you can have to crush demo lessons. And I'm going to tell you, in 2023 on, demo lessons are just something required by all schools, big or small. So you have to have activities in class management or you will fail. So if you don't know any activities or games, boom, right there. No idea how to write a lesson plan? Boom, right there. And if you don't want to do anything, you don't want to write any lesson plans, you don't want to write any activities, then boom, right there, 10 ready-to-use lesson plans, 8 activities, your job has been done for you, you're welcome. So either way, this requirement of not needing English to pass high school anymore is kind of concerning. And it brings up a question, are public schools even an option anymore? And what about English centers? What does this mean for English centers and public schools? Public schools, I feel they're going to start removing teachers quite quickly. They also don't have to pay Vietnamese teachers as much anymore, as this isn't a required class for them to teach. A lot of people are trying to send their kids abroad. And to get an immigration visa out of Vietnam, you have to speak English. So the idea of English centers falling apart in the next year or 2, I think is going to take a lot longer than that, as there's a lot of reasons for them to still be open. And I do feel with the growing dependence of phones, TikTok, Instagram, all this nonsense, students aren't learning English fast. So for them to be in these English centers for 10, 12 years to learn one single language, I think is going to be a continuing trend for some time. But speaking of phones, with all the technology Vietnamese kids have, newest iPhones, the parents have them, iPads, and the ability to learn a second language online for pretty much free or super cheap. In the Western world, we learn a new language online. We learn it through Italki or some other app, and it costs a couple $100s. In Vietnam, parents spend thousands of dollars a month, and the kids don't learn for 10 or 12 years. But when students learn that they can learn English online 95% cheaper, I think that's going to be the nail in the coffin. Where do you find work and not find work? So before doing this video, I spent a week talking to a lot of different teachers, different groups, a lot of agents to get the most information possible. So first, some of the biggest concerns that teachers were having on these groups that I was talking to were that the competitive market is going to become way more competitive. There might not no longer be job growth within a company. You might just be a teacher. That's kind of where you plateau. Job security might just be the thing of the past. You can't guarantee you're going to be a teacher for the next 6-7 years. And the biggest concerns were visas and work permit support. So getting a job, just from the facts that we got, public schools are going to be a thing of the past for us to actually work at. But as I said before, I don't know how fast this will be. We have to consider the facts and the ideas of what's going to happen. And the big one is these schools no longer have to deal with an English program. They're no longer pressured to hire native English-speaking teachers. And most parents won't even pay extra for these classes no more because they're just not required. And there's an English center for this. So this makes me think that there's going to be a lot of changes in the beginning of the next year. The first, second quarter, I think there's going to be a huge change in public school requirements and how they deal with Western native and non-native teachers. So this leads us to the bigger English centers that do in-house English lessons and programs. I feel this is going to be the best spot for native and non-native teachers because this is their sole income. This is where all their money comes from, or English classes. And they are going to be pouring all their money and time into marketing to get more students in. Because at the end of the day, these centers depend on the students to come in and pay the fees. They don't get government funding like a public school does. Where do you apply for these jobs? If you're already out here in Vietnam, there are some common ways. Zalo groups, Facebook groups, or going the normal way of just going directly to an agent to find a job. So I took some time and talked to some Zalo group owners and also Facebook group owners that have their own groups with hundreds of different teachers in there that help schools find teachers. And they told me their biggest feedback they get from the schools is a lot of them complain. They say these teachers they hire from these groups typically are unexperienced, they're unprofessional, or there's always some kind of a complication with them and the students that requires the school to remove them. Which makes me think that Vietnamese schools and English centers are going to stop hiring these agents to hire Western teachers or go through these Facebook and Zalo groups. Take that how you want, but this is something the schools are starting to recognize. Now, in regards to these agents, there is something else that I noticed. They're typically looking for teachers that already have a work permit or can just do substitution classes. They're not looking really for a full-time, sign a contract, get a work permit job. Which to me sounds like no job security, or this school cannot legally hire you as a native teacher, which could lead you into, again, some job security issues or even legal problems. So if you're working at, I don't want to use school names, but let's say you're working at school A and they give you a work permit, and then you go work at school B on the weekends and you teach. And the police randomly show up at the school and say, hey, we want to make sure all your native teachers have work permits. And they see your work permit says school A on it. Not only do you get in trouble and school B gets fined, school A also gets fined. And in the end of this result, you can either A, get your work permit suspended or removed, or B, Vietnam might actually remove you. This is a big reason why a lot of schools, when they give you a work permit, part of the contract says you cannot work for another school. This is the reason why. They get in trouble if you flash their work permit at another school. And this is what a lot of these groups are looking for, are these teachers. So they're kind of risking your time in Vietnam so they can benefit financially. Don't do it. I noticed that a lot of these schools are no longer looking for long-term teachers. Like they want somebody that can just cover a couple random classes. And a lot of schools out here, they have Vietnamese and Filipino teachers already. They just want like a random Western person from like America, Canada, or the UK to come in and do a class once a month, just so the students can interact with a real Western person. And again, that's not job security. And they're not going to sign a work permit so you can stay here long term, so you're stuck on this visa run process. It's starting to seem like the whole get money real quick, get fast jobs in Vietnam is becoming a thing of the past. Just like back in 2020, they got rid of the business visa so you can no longer retire and stay long term in Vietnam. Now they're getting rid of this. And in regards to the Zalo and Facebook groups, my conclusion to it, let's use a metaphor, shall we? Use these Facebook and Zalo groups like Tinder. Have fun with them, but don't expect anything long term. So what do we do now? It's really important for you guys as teachers to stand out from the pack. You have to understand there's thousands of teachers, well, maybe hundreds of teachers out here right now where I'm at that are looking for jobs. You have to stand out. And I've seen the trends. I've seen where these teachers fault. So whether you're a native or non-native teacher, you need to focus and hold your lesson plan activity skills. You just have to. I cannot stress this enough. Have activities. The ability to run a class with activities and games is crucial to Vietnam in the education system. You can run a class, 90-minute class, where all you do is play games. If you're subject to animals, you just keep playing games the entire hour and a half. You are better off than a teacher that just plays one activity and teaches an actual lesson. But every teacher I've seen get fired, can't get a job, or has issues maintaining a job, always has this problem. And the other big thing is your CV. Do not underestimate the power of your CV. One, have your picture on the top. You have to have your picture on your CV. You will be overlooked if not. But also what you put on there, written, is very important. You have to write this CV so it focuses on how you benefit the school. These schools do not care what you did back home, what awards you got back home, what promotions you had, or how much money you control. They don't care what your manager back home said about you. They just don't care. It doesn't benefit them. And I know a lot of these schools, they'll ask you for references. They will not call them if they are not in Vietnam. Because one, they don't speak English good enough. And two, they're not going to call international for an English teacher. Focus your CV on what you can do for them. So the school sees, oh, this is a benefit we need for our school. This will benefit our students. This will benefit, make the parents happy. This is who we need. So focus your CV on how it benefits them. And again, if you're lacking activities or how to write a lesson plan, it's not good, but it's fixable. And also, it's not as uncommon as you think. I think like 7 or 8 out of 10 teachers I meet don't know how to do activities or write really good lesson plans. And this is also why a lot of teachers within a few months get fired, because they don't know how to write these activities. They don't keep the kids happy. The parents complain. The school complains. Your lesson plans make no sense. Whatever it is, I've already showed you activities, lesson plans, or I wrote it for you. You don't even have to do anything. Just put it on your phone and look at it before you teach a class. Done. I strongly feel 2023 is going to be the last year of where you can just kind of wing it and be a teacher, make a few bucks. You're watching this video right now, meaning that you know something most of these teachers have no idea about. I talked to thousands of teachers in the last week and a half asking questions about this, asking groups about this, and maybe 4 people had any idea what I was talking about. People don't understand what is happening to teaching English in Vietnam. It is going to change, and it's going to be hard. Only the best and most qualified are going to be able to keep jobs out here in Vietnam. So with that being said, guys, hopefully this information helps you on what's about to happen in Vietnam, because this will affect every one of you that are out here teaching. Till then, guys, I will see you again.